Working.
Yep.
Cool. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Allied Air A2L transition training. My name is Tom Frank. I am one of the product managers here at APR Supply. I have been in the industry about 27 years, so these sorts of transitions are not new for me. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the various components here that are happening within the Allied Air brands. You see on the right side of the screen here, we've got the Concorde brand, we've got Aries, we do sell Armstrong in some of our markets, as well as the Magic Pack products as well. So A2L, if you're not familiar with that, just refers to a category of refrigerants. And if you're following along what's been happening in the industry, there is a shift to new refrigerants that fall within this A2L category. The Allied brands are going to be moving towards R454B. So 410A is the current brand that you probably know. 454B is what you'll see in many of the unitary lines, Allied brands being one of them. It is a low global warming potential refrigerant, or GWP is an acronym that you'll see thrown around as we go through all of these transitions. 454B is one of these A2L refrigerants you're going to see has a GWP of 466. Another refrigerant that is being used by many of the ductless manufacturers and maybe one or two unitary brands is R32, and that is a GWP of 675. And the mandate is to get below 700. So, which one's better, R32, 454B? Well, they all check the boxes. And, if you were talking to a consumer who's maybe looking at some choices out there, 454B, I guess you could market as the more environmentally friendly refrigerant out there since it has a lower GWP. Some things that are different, I'll just put on a little history lesson here. When we went through the last refrigerant change, which was going from R22 to 410A, there were some timelines that were different, some sell-throughs of product. Manufacturers had to stop making equipment that used R22. The refrigerant itself became, a little more scarce in the marketplace. But you could kind of sell it as long as you could get your hands on it. It was really an unlimited sort of sell-through. The timing that's different here with this refrigerant change from years past is that there's really only for components that we're just going to call a system here. There's a 1-year sell-through for components. So manufacturers have to stop making equipment that use 410A by the end of this year, which is just a few months away. But us as a distributor, our contractor partners, you can install equipment for only a 1-year period. Once you get to once you get to the end of 2025, December 31st, 2025, it essentially becomes an install ban to install an R410A system. So that's what's a little bit different. So planning the products and inventory becomes way more different than it did way back when, because if I have too much, I can't sell it, you can't sell it or install it, it becomes a problem. This chart here is from Allied. It just talks about some of the changes in the ramp down based on years in the past, as well as the equipment sell-through. There's a couple key words in here that are interesting, and I'll just highlight a couple of them. Let me get a cursor on the screen here too. You'll see the word product used. You could think of a product in our world as something that is completely sealed, leaves the factory. A rooftop unit is a great example of that. Residential package units, window air conditioners, refrigerators, things like that. They actually have a 3-year sell-through period. That's part of that ruling after the end of this year. Systems, which are a little more common in our marketplace and footprint that we do business in, they're really defined as, you have to build this system out in the field. So a split system is a great example of that. An outdoor AC or heat pump installed with an indoor coil or air handler, commercial or residential for that matter. There's just really a 1-year sell through for that. And then you have the word, repair components. So if you're thinking about, this question came up this morning about, will I be able to get components to repair my R410A system that I'm buying today? And the answer to that question is yes, that all of these have different timelines of when they can be sold and installed in the marketplace. Of course, something to consider as we move to these new refrigerants is that they are in a different category, and as you're buying new tools, gauges, vacuum pumps, recovery machines, you should make sure that you're preparing yourself so that you have the tools and parts and pieces necessary for a transition. If you have a vacuum pump that's 20 years old, shame on you, I guess, unless it works, but it's probably not compatible with a new refrigerant. So it's time to get a new one. Some interesting things just to think about. I'm not going to go over every single one of these bullet points, but the point with this slide here, from an application and an installation perspective, there really aren't that many things, if any, that are different about the installation process of a 454B system versus 410A. We still have to make sure we size it properly. The ductwork has to be right. We got to have the right low voltage wires, the right equipment sized properly, line sets, everything's really the same. The one that you'll see that's different here, and we'll touch on this today, is connecting a refrigerant detection system wires according to the manufacturer's instructions. And that's probably something that you've never encountered before or heard of before. Every manufacturer will probably call this something different. But it's a new component in the systems of the new equipment that we're selling, you're installing, that it does exactly what it sounds like. It's detecting refrigerant outside of the refrigerant circuit in case there is a leak. Okay, this is a required component for manufacturers with volumes of refrigerant that exceed the limitations. So small systems, window units, maybe even some ductless systems that don't use a lot of refrigerant may not require this, but your everyday unitary system, split system that you're going to install is most likely going to require some sort of sensor. I'll talk about the sensor a little bit more later. But other than that, everything else really stays the same. So, what is a refrigerant detection sensor or control? These are all the components, and I have some more detail later, but you can see it's a little black box that has some connections inside of it. There's a little sensor with a whip that gets installed typically by the evaporator coil. Those pieces work in harmony with each other. The sense refrigerant, think of it like a wet switch or some other secondary device that when it detects something, it shuts the system down, if you will. It'll do some more things, but that's essentially what the refrigerant detector sensor is. I have more slides later to talk about it. Just kind of want to introduce you to the concept to it here. Some systems that we will sell and install will come with these factory installed. You'll have to do nothing, just wire it up like you normally will. Some products within the Allied family in particular will act like a bridge. So they will be maybe shipped for 410A, but convertible to 454B. So when you do that conversion process, you'll probably be required, in fact, you will be required to install these components to make it work properly. If you have questions too during this presentation, you can enter it during the chat component of the Teams meeting, and we can answer them at the end, and that would probably be the preferred method. So the timing of this, like I mentioned, the manufacturers have to stop making stuff that use 410A by the end of the year. When it comes to orders, and that's not, maybe contractor orders with the distributor, but orders that we make with the manufacturer, that timeline is a little different. The manufacturers have to be able to make enough product to satisfy the orders that they have by the end of the year. So you can actually see here in this timing, they actually started making new coils, multi-refrigerant coils, which we'll talk about back in May. We have many of them already in an inventory. The sensors kits have started to being able to be ordered from the manufacturer. We're right now in the process of switching over air handlers to a multi-refrigerant air handler. It can be used for either. And you can see the timing of ordering all of the new 454B product is, we're right on the cusp of that. So we're in this, funny time of a transition period where all of the new stuff is not quite available yet, but the old stuff, what you can find in the marketplace is what you're going to be able to get. You'll see further down the timeline, there are some furnace changes that are going to happen within the Allied family as well, too. So how do we as a distributor manage this changeover process? It's comforting for all to know that here at APR, we have a lot of really great people working on this problem. The timing of products, what we sell, all very critical to understand, when and how much of the new product to order, factor in, when the manufacturer, it actually becomes available from them. It's a lot of different things to tie together to try to get it right. But we have a lot of great people. This is a picture of one of the tools that we're using today that one of our own employees, Austin Hayes, who was named one of the top 20 people under 40 in our industry by the Supply House Times, has put together to help us. We update this every day. It takes a look at the current models that we have, the new models that they're going to, how much we have of each, how many are on purchase order, and it helps us to make sure that we're not missing anything. So that's one of the tools that we use that we developed in-house. Austin did a great job with that. If you're wondering, what is our strategy with 410A? Are we stocking up? Are we moving to the new equipment as fast as possible? That's a yes and a no in both of those categories. We have already placed our last orders for 410A equipment with the manufacturer. That's done. The goal is really for us to have enough product to get us past the timeline of when the new product is available, plus a buffer, roughly about 6 weeks, just in case. Is the manufacturer's timeline going to be perfect? Maybe, maybe not, but we're going to have 6 weeks in there. The flagship brands, which are Aries and Armstrong for Allied for us, our general stocking strategy is to move to the new 454B as it becomes available. However, we do recognize that many of our customers do want to continue to order 410A as long as possible. Maybe it's a price thing, maybe they just don't like change. And we've ordered enough extra inventory that we believe will get us to about June of 2025-ish. I put the ish in there because who knows? It might be before then, might be after that. A lot of variables. But that's our general 410A stocking strategy for the Allied brands. -01 versus -71. Years ago, when I started in this business, my first job was working in the warehouse. I was pulling orders and shipping product out to customers. And I could vividly remember thinking that a model number was close enough to ship out, a 6 versus a 7. And I learned very quickly that that's not the case. And every model within the model number is critically important. When you get into the Allied products, as we move to these new products, you will see suffixes, and the suffix comes at the end of the model. Prefix comes before, suffix at the end. You'll see some have a -01, and some will have a -71. The 7 is very important because the 7 in the allied world indicates the 454B refrigerant. Years past, it may have meant 17 SEER, but as a suffix within the model number, the -01 will mean that it is convertible to 454B. It will come factory shipped as 410A, but it can actually be converted to 454B. That doesn't mean you can install it in the field as 410A and then later down the road to convert it to 454B. That just means if I have it in my inventory and somebody needs a 454B system, I can actually give them the correct components, which we'll talk about, to convert it to 454B. Some models through Allied, as time moves on, will actually just begin shipping with a -71. And those are specific and dedicated for the use of our 454B. And in fact, those components will have the refrigerant detection sensors and controls. That'll already be built in. So I'm starting with coils and air handlers because they are the same models and nomenclature between Aries and Armstrong and Concord. But just to kind of give you a glimpse of what those new models will look like, you will see here very early at the beginning of the model, it'll be a 7 that indicates 454B. The E, the H or U or D or M will indicate the application, the capacity, width, expansion valve, and then you'll see the suffix at the end there of 01, which would be a multi-refrigerant coil shipped for 410A, convertible to 454B, or a 71, which is dedicated to the R54 refrigerant. When we're looking at these coils, how the models change, and I will say this in this transition, that you're going to see a lot of the same. You will see some different things and maybe some small details that are different, but for the most part, what was available in 410A will likely be available in 454B, just a different model number and some different stuff. So here's a good example of some coils, the EAC1P, EAC4X, one's a piston, one's TXV. Right now, or in that process, you'll see the coils coming shipped as 7EC, and they'll have a -01 at the end of them. Okay, that's our flex coil or bridge coil or multi-refrigerant coil, whatever you want to call it. And then over time, they will become a -71 in 454B. And you'll see that we have that strategy for upflow coils, that same strategy for horizontal, and that same strategy for downflow. Some of these coils that existed in the past, the piston, the EAC1P, the EAH1P, which was piston, they're gone. Everything becomes a factory installed TXV moving forward. No more piston. Air handlers are a very similar story there. Again, you'll see the 7 at the beginning indicate the 454B. Air handler that we do make and manufacture an electric furnace or a modular air handler. There'll be some notations here of certain series are 1-piece versus 2-piece. Different motor selections, capacities, voltages, expansion valves. Most of the air handlers will be 24 volt, and a very select few will be comfort sync enabled, or you could think of that as communicating there. Get rid of it. There it goes. The air handler lineup is really very similar to what you're used to. Again, there won't be any more PSC. So if you were used to, there won't be any more piston. So if you were used to a piston air handler, which used to exist, that's gone. But we're right in the middle right now of the current transition to going to these multi-refrigerant coils or bridge air handlers, if you will. And they all have a -01, very similar. We have lots of different choices there. There's PSC, there's constant torque, there is a very true variable speed, and you'll see eventually they will migrate to the 454B dedicated. That's a typo here. This one here should be PSC. I didn't make this. The high performance air handlers, not crazy popular in our markets, but they do exist. These are two-piece air handlers. They have an ECM or variable speed ECM. One is communicating only. This guy is. They're in the bridge. There you will only find that constant torque ECM model, but eventually you will find both available. The EFE, that is what they call an electric furnace, or you could think of it like a modularium. It's the blower section only. That also will be available in 454B, no bridge. We get to the outdoor units here, starting off here with the Aries and Armstrong brand, both the air conditioner and heat pump nomenclature. In the flagship brands, you will see an A at the beginning as a prefix. That denotes the flagship brand of Aries or Armstrong, depending on the market that you're in. 454 is the 7, AC versus heat pump. Very, very simple. We will have some models that are coming out. They're going to be cold climate heat pump capable. So a lot of neat new stuff coming out. Your efficiencies, your compressor, whether it's fixed or variable speed, you'll see more variable speed product in the future. Capacity, voltage, whether it's communicating capable or not, and so on and so forth. This is flagship. This is Aries brand I'm showing here, but you will see that if we had it in the one refrigerant, which was 410A, you'll see it again in 454B with some minor tweaks and changes. So we have a full variable communicating capable 23 SEER air conditioner. That'll be available in the same series, Pro Series, we refer to that. An 18 SEER, that'll be available as a 19, also communicating capable. And then you'll have the single stage units. A couple things to note is a change in the model nomenclature here. What was confusing for many before of having a 17 and a 16 in the nomenclature, calling something a 16 or a 17, when in fact its minimum efficiency is 13. The manufacturers decided to change their nomenclature on I'll just call it the lower end series within each brand, the entry level series, which would be for the North and South, to more closely reflect the minimum efficiency in that market, not necessarily what efficiency can it achieve, it's what efficiency does it achieve, just condenser and loose coil combination by itself. You may love that strategy, you may hate that strategy, but that was voice of the customer feedback that drove the manufacturer to make that change. I can assure you from looking at initial ratings that you are not sacrificing anything. That equipment is not going down in efficiency. If anything, it might actually be going up. That's strictly a nomenclature decision. Heat pumps, similar story. Currently, we have a 22. We'll have something similar. That will be a cold climate heat pump capable, which is a pretty nice feature. Also, the 18 modulating will transition as well as the standard single stage, and you'll see that same nomenclature change again. So instead of it being a 17, which really goes back to old SEER numbers, we're really focused in on SEER 2 numbers now, which are different. Again, same tax credit qualifying capabilities, still really strong performance, just a change in nomenclature. Concord is very similar. This is the value-driven series of the Allied brands. There's no A at the front. It starts right off with the refrigerant, which is 7, AC versus heat pump. We've got our SEERs, our capacities, tonnage, voltage, so on and so forth. There are no communicating capable systems in the Concord family. You'll see the same transition here with air conditioners. It's not as deep of a line. This is a value line. So you have basic single stage stuff for North and South, and then you have an inverter product here for higher end or just different types of applications that you might want to use that. Same with heat pumps. You really have two choices of heat pumps. You have the 7, what was the 17 now moves to the 14. The old 18, which exists today, or we call the Lynx, will be a 19. That's a variable speed compressor product. Gas furnaces, you'd think in this whole changeover here, why would I ever need to change the gas furnace? And this changeover doesn't happen till a little bit longer down the timeline, really in 2025. Um, the nomenclature is really the same. The only thing that you really need to look at here is this refrigerant sensing control. This is new, and that will be at the end of the model. It'll have a K at the end. And that just means that that control that the sensor hooks up to will be built into the furnace. So the coils will come with the sensors eventually, and you will just plug that into the furnace control board. You will not need any sort of additional control. The lineup is not any different than it was before. If we stocked it before, we'll continue to stock it moving forward. Again, this doesn't happen till a little bit later down the timeline, but everything that was before continues in the future. This is the 90% furnace lineup. I will say this, for both the flagship brand and the Concord brands, that we have an absolute ton of models of furnaces that qualify for the federal tax credit of $600 by being 97%. You can see just in this family of Aries or Armstrong, we have a full modulating, we have a two-stage true variable speed, we have a two-stage constant torque. Those are all 97 plus product, with the modulating being actually 98%. That's incredible. That means for every dollar you're putting in for fuel, you're getting 98 cents of heat out of it. 80%ers, we still sell them, we still stock them. Similar change, you'll see the K at the end. If we had it in stock as 410A, we'll continue to stock it in 454B. There are many models that are available at the manufacturer level that we don't stock. You'll see sometimes ultra low NOx or low NOx. We're not really a market for that, which is a good thing. So we keep it pretty simple. The nomenclature for Concord, I spelled it wrong, Concord, is very similar. Again, you'll just see the K. That's really going to be the only change at the end of that model nomenclature that you're going to see. And that just really means that it has an integrated control into the furnace control board. Same thing with Concord. If we had it before, we'll have it again. It'll just have a K at the end of it. Same story. So even in a value line, which is very unusual, we have two furnace lineups within Concord that achieve the federal tax credit of 97% efficient, which is very unusual. One is a two-stage variable speed, and the other is a two-stage constant torque. So that's a very unique thing within the product lineup and a great reason to sell this brand. Similar story for 80%. Electric heat kits. As we move to the new air handlers, both the bridge or multi-refrigerant air handlers, as well as the dedicated 454B, the electric heat kits are changing. In fact, they have changed already. And if you ordered a system, even if it was an old BCE 5 series, just as an example, you may have actually already gotten a new electric heat kit. That's not a mistake. They are backwards compatible. I have a slide that will show you a little bit more about that. The old electric heat kits, which really are not available at the manufacturer anymore, will not fit, nor should they be used in the new style air handlers there. But you'll see the lineup of the air handlers there. It's not too incredibly difficult there. You got BCE 5 series. Everything within that series takes the same electric heat kit. These electric heat kits are backwards compatible to old series BCE 5 air handlers. There is a BCE 7E air handler. It was a two-piece, not very popular in our marketplace. This is the new nomenclature for the new models. They do require a different electric heat kit. Okay, that electric heat kit for this specific air handler is also backwards compatible. And then you have what we call the Pro Series air handler. You would only use this for flagship brand communicating types of systems. That's making a change. those electric heat packs are very specific. So, just word of caution there, make sure you're using the correct electric heat kit for the correct air handler. You'll know when it doesn't fit. A couple takeaways here for electric heats. I already mentioned this, but the ECB 45s, which are really the value-driven kind of air handlers, if you will, those electric heat kits are backwards compatible to the old BCE5 series air handlers. And like I mentioned, the old heat kits will not fit in the new air handlers, nor should they be used in them. Same thing with that middle of the road, that two-piece air handler, the ECM model. They are backwards compatible to the BCE 70 air handlers. The new air handlers, the new high-end communicating capable, like I mentioned, they require specific kits. Use the chart to figure out which one you need. So I'm just going to come back to this refrigerant detector sensor, which is really the most unique thing about this refrigerant change. And I got a couple other little ditties to go over as well. But when you look at this control here, you'll see it's really, depending on what system you're installing, and this chart is very helpful, that if I am using a multi-refrigerant coil with a -01 at the end of it, and I have a furnace, like the current lineup of furnaces, or some other brand of furnace that's existing. The homeowner wants to change the condenser in the coil, but the furnace is only 2 years old. These are the components that I would need to make that system operate properly with 454B. I would need this control pack and the sensor. If I am in the future now and I have the new furnace, but I am taking an older coil that is a multi-refrigerant coil and converting it, I would only need the sensor because the control is built into the furnace. If I had an air handler that did not have, it was an O1 air handler, I would need both. It does not have that control built into it. The sensor is not built into it. I have to convert it completely to make it work. And you'd see here down here, well, if I have a new 454B coil, I'm in the future now, we have these in stock, and I have an old furnace, can I still make that work? Absolutely you can. It's just the control is not built into that furnace. The coil has the sensor already in it, and we just have to add the extra control. No big deal. These are just all of the part numbers for all of those things. Just know that they're specific depending on the application, and they're available. Not quite yet, but they will be. We have some decision trees. These are actually available for the APR teammates. These are on Allied Connect, which is a distributor portal. This just shows and helps you to understand, do I need this or not? The goal for our customers is that this is almost transparent to you and that we're giving you the right things, but we will use tools like this to make sure that we're giving you the right components. This helps us for air handlers to understand, boy, is it a dedicated air handler? Yes, it is. Then, we're already good to go. I just hook the outdoor unit up to it. I really don't need anything different. If I'm using a multi-refrigerant air handler with the -01 and I'm trying to convert it to 454B, then yes, I need some different things. I need the air handler sensor kit, I need the control board, and then I'm going to need a TX valve to convert that TXV also to 454B. We have a similar chart here that's for a coil. So I'm doing a new 454B coil. What do I need? Well, if it's the dedicated coil, it just depends, is my furnace without or with the new RDS board in it? If it has it, I don't need to do anything different. I'm ready to go. Just plug everything up. If it doesn't, yeah, I'm going to need a couple extra components. Same thing if I've got the multi-refrigerant coil. Well, how am I installing this? Is 454 or 410A? 410A. Well, I don't need to do anything. 454B here. All right, well, I got to add a couple more things. These are the things that we need. These are the TXVs that you will need if you are converting a multi-refrigerant coil or air handler to 454B. The TXV does actually need to be changed. Keep in mind, we're really in the future as we move. This is not forever. This is just with multi-refrigerant coils and air handlers. Eventually, they're available, and we'll have them in stock as completely dedicated. This is a picture here that I thought was neat, and I thought I would share to kind of visualize. I have an outdoor unit, and the wires are going to my refrigerant detection controller. We could just pretend that this is a current furnace that you would buy from me today, or perhaps some other brand furnace that's existing in the field, and I buy a coil. I would need this refrigerant detection controller, the thermostat wires up to it, the outdoor wires up to it. The sensor would be mounted inside of the coil, wires up to it. Everything wires up to it. It becomes almost part of the brains of the operation. Some of you might be wondering, well, what happens if it senses a leak? Obviously, the system turns off. And what's part of the ruling that the manufacturers have to work towards is that instead of it just turning off the system, it actually turns on the blower to circulate and dilute the air, okay? Dilute the refrigerant, if you will, so that it's not a concentration of refrigerant right at the coil. The A2L refrigerants are a mildly flammable category of refrigerants. That shouldn't scare you, but we do have to have all these different things on the equipment to make it work properly. When the system gets, when the sensor detects that the operation level, there's no more refrigerant concentration high enough, everything will fire back up again and continue to run. There are error codes that you would see on the board that will tell you whether it's operating normally. What's happening here. Blue would mean that it went through a mitigation. You might go on a service call, system's running fine, but you find that the light is blue. Well, that means that it did go through a mitigation, that it did actually sense refrigerant, and it went through its cycle, and it did detect something. Flashing blue would mean that it's actively detecting refrigerant. Red could be anything from, it's just a fault in the sensor, it needs to be replaced, or something of that nature. When you wonder why the coils have gotten so big over the years, it's because the manufacturers ran out of room to put stickers. So they had to make the coils bigger to put the stickers. I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek. That's kind of a joke, but the coil dimensions themselves actually have not changed with the refrigerant change. Very little has changed with the coil build itself. Allied as a manufacturer has moved to OmniGuard for their outdoor condenser coils, their indoor VAPs. That is an all aluminum coil technology. It works very good. They are absolute freaks about quality control in their factory and leak detection at the factory level to make sure that a coil that leaves the factory does not have a leak in it. But you will see that when coils are converted, this would be an example of the multi-refrigerant coil. By the time you get done putting all the stickers on the cabinet, there's not much cabinet left. This is a picture of a coil that's been converted to 454B. These are boots that the manufacturer will provide to that go on the line set connection, if you will. That helps to make sure that even if you had a leak at a joint, at your refrigerant joint where you're making your connection to the coil, that it would go back into the coil cabinet for detection. This is a picture here of what that little sensor looks like. It's not much of anything. It's a little tiny black box. This is a picture of what that board looks like. You can see here, this is where the thermostat and the condenser cables get landed, or wires. And this is the wires that go to the indoor product, whether that be an air handler or a gas furnace. And these Molex plugs up here, you actually see two banks of them. More times than not, you're only ever going to be using one for your sensor to plug into. But we might find as time marches forward that some municipalities require not only a sensor in the cabinet, but they might want something outside of the cabinet. So the control boards actually have another set of a Molex plug there that you could plug in a second sensor. I think that will be rare, but it's there just in case a municipality may require that. Giving a quick plug to the Allied, the flagship brands, the A3 communicating control. There's a lot of new equipment coming out with variable compressors. The equipment that Allied is producing is, many of it is communicating capable or 24-volt control. So you have the option. Everything will work under 24-volt control potentially, but many of the equipment might have the option for that. I think that they make a very good control. Just remind you that it's available. It works on Pro Series equipment, which is the communicating capable stuff. How the system will run is different when you have a communicated control versus 24 volt. How it determines what the coil temperature needs to be to meet a set point, how much airflow to move is different. The user interface is wonderful on this control. It's a very good customer experience if you so choose to use it. So you don't have to. Some other changes within the Allied brand that are notable. You will see, and every manufacturer will be a little different with how they do this, you will see longer stub outs on the outdoor units and evap coils. And that's so that if you choose and you want to cut the bell end off, you can press and you've got enough meat on that stub out that you can refrigerant press on. You can see some pictures where somebody did that here, and you've got enough meat on that. I use the word meat. You got enough copper, whatever, to press onto. If you want to braze, have at it. If you want to press, that's okay too. I put a note on here, despite the change in nomenclature, some of the lower end series of the brands used to be 16 and 17. And of course, that meant it could be up to 16 SEER 1 or 17 SEER 1. Despite that change in nomenclature from 16 to 13 and 17 to 14, I've looked at ratings already of units that are currently in the design process or available to order. And you're not missing anything. What was before, I think you'll find is in the new product and then some. It's just strictly a manufacturer's decision to reset that nomenclature on that series of equipment. On the Pro Series outdoors, I mentioned the cold climate heat pump. You can expect to see some changes yet. These have not been unveiled yet, but you will see composite bottom, composite top, very nice look. If you squint with your eyes very tightly, you will see that on the cabinet here, right here, it's a very small dot. If you've been selling Allied for a product, you may have been asking for this. This is a screw halfway down the panel. The new 454B units have 2 additional screws on each panel. I think most guys will like. Not excessive, but looks nice. It'll help the cabinet to look nice. Motor speed or variable speed motor modules. So if you're familiar with that type of a product, you'll know that those motors are 2-piece typically. As we move to the new furnaces, I don't have a picture. I only know this because I was down at Allied a couple days ago, and they showed us that the variable speed models, the head of that motor or the module is going to be relocated to where the control assembly is. So that will allow a little bit better airflow over that motor and make it a little easier as well if you ever had to replace a module. If you've been selling variable speed long enough, you know that the motors almost never fail. It's the module, so changing a module will be very easy. You'll also see more screw-in terminals. So, many of the air handlers had wire nuts. That will basically go away, and you'll just see screw-in terminals. Winding down here, winding down. Wake up, wake up. We got a couple more slides. Magic Pack is a brand of Allied, and it is used commonly in apartments, condominiums. It's a residential application, commercial building, if you will. They're package units. you will find that despite the change in refrigerant, it is not a lot of change. The model nomenclature will change. The cabinets are not really changing. In fact, on really most of the systems that we sell in the field, they won't even require that mitigation control kit because the refrigerant circuit is so small. All good things. Example of a couple different model numbers. The big takeaway here, honestly, is this 7, which will denote it's not denote the refrigerant there of 454B. That's what that 7 will represent. This is an H series, or the V series, I guess we would call it, vintage. This is a product that's been on the marketplace for a very long time. No other changes that I'm aware of. Dimensions are the same. Slide it out, slide it in. You wire it up, hook it up, away she goes. What refrigerant is in there will almost be transparent because it's already sealed from the factory. The M series, which is probably the newer product within the family, again, very little change, with the exception of the 7 here. There are some tonnages here where you will probably see mitigation sensors. It'll really be, transparent to you. It'll already be factory installed, but, these do go up to some higher tonnages. This is the transition rule as it affects Magic Pack, really considered a product, if you will. So because it is sealed from the factory, that actually has a 3-year sell-through. That's nice, but I'm going to guess that, probably once you're 1 year past this transition anyway, I doubt you'll even be able to find any anymore. The manufacturers have been cranking out so much 410A stuff right now, they can barely meet the orders that they have. I doubt there will be a tremendous amount of surplus inventory anywhere. Yeah. The interesting part of the sell-through when it comes through a Magic Pack is you can see here we have the units, the M series, V series. The manufacturers can't make equipment that use those refrigerants anymore, but you would find that, a chassis actually falls because that refrigerant circuit, which is like the replacement guts of the air conditioning side of the unit, those are available. Those also have a 3-year sell-through. Again, I think, by the time you get, that's nice, you'll probably just have a hard time finding it, to be honest. Nomenclature already really went over. Same thing. Timeline for Magic Pack products. The order cutoffs for the old 410A were actually back in late June. So, if I don't have it and I don't have it on order, it's over. But you're really starting to see, we're in that time period right now where we're really going to start to see all the new 454B product really start getting cranked out from the manufacturer. This brings me to my last slide, which is the question slide. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing here. That is all I have for today. Does anybody have any questions? Ooh, there's something in the chat. See what's in the chat. Oh, I don't have nearly as many people on as Matt Novello did. I deal with ICP stuff. Is that going to be covered? Good question. I will say that, we did a recorded meeting this morning. It was actually this morning at 8 a.m. And you'd find a very similar storyline, some differences on how they do things, but there will be a recording of that will be available. So Dave Landgarden, I'll make a note here to make sure you get a copy of that link. Anybody else have any questions? Doesn't look like it.
Well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate your time and sharing your expertise on Allied.
Thank you very much. I guess we'll wrap it up and everybody have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.